The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast, a weekly show about all things Port Adelaide Footy Club. I'm your host Macca 19, and joining me as always, we got Fishing Rick. How are you, buddy?
Great, Macca. What about you, buddy?
Good, mate. Good.
Stay out of trouble?
Always. Never in trouble, mate.
Good work. That's what I like to hear.
That's the way. And the first time on the podcast, we've got QPower.
G'day guys, how you going? I've listened to your podcasts over the last year or so and really enjoyed them. Delighted to be on.
Fantastic.
Keep talking like that and you can keep coming back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great to have you on, mate. Let's find out a little bit about your Port background and how you became a Port supporter.
Well, I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Adelaide, and my grandmother, who was born in 1912, mad Port supporter, so I sort of followed her lead and started going to Port games around 1981 and was a regular attendee sort of right through until when I left Adelaide in 1994. And been trying to get to as many AFL games as I can, sort of with an itinerant lifestyle since.
Beautiful. And what about your favourite game?
I think my favourite match, probably nothing's quite as vivid as it is in childhood, was the I think it was round 4, 1988, the day after Anthony Williams died at Norwood Oval. I can't remember the atmosphere at a game being as charged as that before or since. And it was a special day for the club. I think it sort of exemplified everything the club stands for.
Absolutely, a fantastic day. And I think it's one of those sort of times where you look at something horrible that's happened, such as Anthony Williams passing away, and you look at what that actually did on field for the club as well, because I think Stephen Williams pulled out of that match, as you would expect. And therefore we pushed George Fiachi back, where he made a back pocket his own for the next sort of 10 years.
And I think that was the first day he really played at the level we came to expect from him. And I think, we were up against it that day. That was a very good Norwood side, players like Gary McIntosh and Michael Aish.
Yep.
And, it was a special day. And we sort of, I think we're about 4 goals down at half-time and mowed them down quite late.
Yeah, it was a great game, that one. What about your favourite player?
Probably since the power came in, probably Gavin Wanganeen. Just the freakish things he could do on the field.
Yep.
And what about that video tonight, boys? Did you see it?
Yeah.
Wasn't it excellent?
Very emotional.
Yeah. Whoever's got hold of the media department in the last 18 months or so is doing an exceptional job down there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you and whoever else placed it spot on. I mean, the media now has just been fantastic, hasn't it? Like, so relevant, relates to the fans, keeps us in touch with the players, but it's sort of heartfelt, the sort of presentation that we're getting and genuine. And yeah, but can't disagree with you. Wanganeen, what a superstar he was.
Yeah, I think the presence of Keith Thomas and David Koch has been really important. Both know about marketing and branding. Probably the last time we had a period of dominance, we weren't able to capitalise on it as much in terms of taking market share. But I think this time we will.
Absolutely. And I think talking to a few players, I think like not players, a few of the staff, Scott Fitzgerald in the corporate left, and then they've brought in a new person now, and he's from the DMG days from the radio?
Yeah.
Is it DMG? Yep. Well, anyway, they put another player on there, so that's obviously KT's connection from when he was working there. So obviously he knows the right people and is pulling the right strings and getting the work done.
Yeah, no, excellent.
We got the power to win, power to roll. Come on, Port Adelaide aggression. We are the power from Port.
It's Port versus Collingwood this Sunday at the MCG. We've got an 11-13 win-loss record. We've actually won the last 2. And the last time we met was obviously that famous elimination final last year where we won by 4 goals. How important is this game now? Is this the most important game for the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a season-defining game. I think that it's going to tell the story of whether we essentially have played our best footy this year, or are we going to come again?
I agree. It's hard for me, this pre-game podcast, actually, because I think I've got more to comment on post-game of where we're at to the pre-game, because as I've said a few times now over the last couple of weeks, it's all about this game. And so how we come out and play this game, I think, is going to reflect how we're going to run out the rest of the season. So it's amazing that it's come to this, that this game's so important. But as was made reference during the week by Hamish Hartlett, I think or Robbie Gray, post the break last year, we came out and played well. I can't remember what the exact stats were. Macca, you probably know. But I'm hoping we come out firing after the break again this week.
Yeah, I think last year it was against GWS where we'd lost those 5 in a row and then came out and played really well up in Sydney, which was terrific. And I guess the other encouraging sign is that the Magpies played really, really well on the weekend, which suggests that the heavy training load, which everyone suspects but the club denies, is finished.
Yeah. You would think so. I mean, for me, this is the most important game of the year. I mean, there's so much riding on this result for both teams. I mean, if we win and we win well, that really puts us in great contention for the top 4, and you think we'd be a really big chance to beat Freo and Sydney later on in the year. If we lose, you would think it's going to be pretty tough to make top 4. And the same situation for Collingwood as well. I mean, if they win, they're right in the chance to still make the 8. If they lose, they're pretty much out.
You're being a bit of a tragic with the ladder predictor. I think that if we won 3 of the 5, we'd have to be really exceptionally lucky in terms of other results going our way. We could still mathematically miss out winning 4 of the 5, but would likely make top 4. So I agree. If we lose this, we can just kiss top 4 goodbye.
Yep. And get ready for that showdown final.
Looking that way.
Exciting times.
Well,
but don't worry.
Going in? Are we confident about this one?
I would be confident, but I'm actually jumping in the car tomorrow to go to Melbourne to see it. So they tend to lose in Melbourne when I go, unfortunately. The Kangaroos game.
Don't go.
Stay at home. No, but I'm trying. Hopefully, it'll break the pattern. But yeah, I think we'll come again after the break. That's my sense. I don't think the playing group's satisfied with what they've achieved so far. I just think because of the youth of the group that they tend to fatigue, whereas clubs like Hawthorn and Sydney can probably just keep it at that slightly higher level to keep winning those kinds of games that we've been losing, like the showdown and to Essendon, which are not by much, but in the end, they're the difference between 4 points and nothing.
I'm with you, mate. I'm flying over, so I'll be there as well on Sunday. Last time I went to a Port Collingwood game away, it was the 2007 Classic where we won by a couple of goals in the wet, which was a bloody good game, that one.
I'm not going. I can't go. I'm very disappointed. And QPower, don't be surprised if you're not going after I finish with what you said with your car. You might not have a working vehicle.
I was at the first showdown this year, so we won that. So it's not all bad. It's the away game. Sometimes it seemed to be a bit of a jinx. The last away game I went to, we won. I think was Eddie had it against St Kilda in 2002 or 3. I think so.
2002 or 3.
That hasn't been a good run.
Oh, my goodness.
James, your car definitely won't be working this weekend.
Yep.
What's your address again?
Not in Adelaide.
This is horrible.
Well, I mean,
what an achievement it's going to be if we win this one, by the sounds of it.
Why would it be an achievement?
Everything's riding against us, I think. I haven't seen us win away through the last 3 games I've been away as well. So,
but it is hard.
This is not good signs.
It's hard to win away, and obviously we've done it a bit this year. But I think unless a club on the road turns up really ready with their A game, they'll get rolled. That seems to be just the reality of the closeness of the comp these days.
It's going to be really interesting to see which Collingwood turns up. I mean, everyone talks about North Melbourne as the Jekyll and Hyde team of the AFL, and I think Collingwood are pretty similar in that respect as well. I mean, they've beaten Sydney, North and Essendon this year, and they've lost to the Dogs, and they've lost to Adelaide twice, and They've lost to Essendon recently as well. I think. I mean, they're just so up and down. I guess they've got quite a young side. They're just so up and down. You just never know which Magpies is going to turn up.
Yeah, look, my sense is their level now, and the best they could play on Sunday is not going to be that high. I think they were probably playing a little bit of a higher level earlier in the season, and they tend to be tapering, or they look to be tapering off now. So if we lose Sunday, I think it tells me that we're spent. If we win, sort of by a couple of goals or more, then I think that the confidence levels will come back, and we'll be ready to have a good crack at Sydney the following week.
I think there's a couple of things we need to take into account. I think one aspect is I believe that the players sort of got ahead of themselves a little bit, and so we got beaten by some desperate sides especially in Adelaide, and obviously Richmond's hit some good form as well. So I think the young playing group would have learned a bit about getting ahead of themselves, and I have a sense that the boys maybe were also sort of rising to the challenge of the big games, where we played the Freo, we played the Geelong, almost beat the Sydney, we played the Hawthorn in a pretty close period of time, and we did so successfully well against those teams. I think the boys, maybe were sort of lifting for the big games and then expecting those lesser games to rock up and get the job done. So I think they've learned a very valuable lesson there, which I'd be shocked if we came out with a bit of a lackadaisical performance on Sunday from that. I think the boys now will probably rise to every game for the rest of the year, knowing that their finals opportunity and will be on the line for this season. I think the other one is I think there is a bit of correlation between the reserves and our team, and so the Magpies run with a lot more run and vigour on the weekend gives me a bit more hope as a supporter that our side with the break coming up against Collingwood with the break should be a massive advantage for us as well. And I'm expecting a lot more run and endeavour. And I agree with the QPower. If we don't see that this weekend, I think the boys are spent and we're going to struggle.
No, indeed, I think that's right. I think it's sort of what separated us from so the sort of the Sydneys and Hawthorns in the past few weeks is that leadership group, probably with the exception of Boak and Gray, just hasn't been able to. I think the rest of the younger players and some of the middle players will follow if the leadership group as a whole can stand up on game day. So obviously Boak and Gray have done that. I mean, Jonas and Lobe, a little bit inexperienced in terms of games, but players like sort of Hartlett, sort of 80-odd games, and Ebert 140, probably haven't quite been getting it done in the last 4 weeks or so. It's a pretty tough call on Evo because he's had a great year, but I think he's been down well below what he would expect of himself in the last month or so.
No, you're exactly right. Look, let's talk about selections a little bit. Obviously, Bobby Carlisle and Gus Monfrey's come straight back in. Dom Cassisi's out, Aaron Young's out with a foot, and Matty White is out as well. Is that going to be a big loss for us?
Yeah, look, I think White's a big loss because we're going to lose that run he has. It sounds like, and it looks like Pollock's had some real trouble sort of maintaining his early season form. And so with White out as well, unless Jared Pollock plays really well, we're probably going to be wanting a bit on the outside. In terms of that run and carry away from stoppages, which both of them sort of were giving us in spades in the first 10 rounds. So I think he will be missed. Probably logical replacement's Andrew Moore because he's been playing so well, but again, he's probably more of an inside ball extractor than a run and carry player. So I suspect the temptation of the match committee might be to go back to Kane Mitchell and ask him to play that role, and he's probably got more limitations than Matt White.
You would think Kane Mitchell would be odds-on favourite, in my opinion, to come straight back in, just because he's got the exposed AFL form of the last sort of 2 months. I reckon Jakey Need might be the one that comes in though. I just think he's more like for like with Whitey. He can play that sort of slippery, quick goal-kicking sort of forward flanker that Whitey does.
Yeah.
Plus,
I don't know.
He's in some ripping form, Jakey Need. He's had a fantastic last 2 months in the SANFL, and if he comes in, he fully deserves his chance.
I still see the Kane Mitchell replacement as the logical one. I thought Mitchell's running. I'm not the most massive fan of Kane, but I thought his running on the weekend was fantastic up both ways. So, like you said, I think especially QPower, I think that's a good replacement. Is that needed? Maybe Carl Amon's going to be the smoky.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we went to Amon at this point. He's probably not ready. I mean, my concern with Kane Mitchell is I just think he gives the ball back too often.
Yeah.
He does a lot well. He works his guts out. He works hard on his game, obviously. He goes back to the SANFL and delivers. But he just doesn't seem to have the composure sometimes. And he goes, sometimes he'll go long when they've got the +1 sitting back there. And our forwards will be hopelessly outnumbered. Our players are trying to run forward of the ball and we get caught out.
Do you think we might play both Newton and Moore?
I don't think so. I'd expect Newton to go out. And Moore's got a bigger body and he's got more AFL experience at this point. I think when you get to this stage of the season with a guy like Newton, worthy as he is, and I think you'll be a good AFL player, it's not really the time to be blooding someone with such little exposed AFL form. I think if we were going to do that, we needed to do it much earlier. But with Andrew Moore, he's already played 35-odd games. He played in last year's final series.
Great player. It's what we need. Macca and I have spoken about this numerous times. He really has to come back into the side, in my opinion, even if it's at the expense of Benny Newton, which I hope isn't the case.
Yeah, look, I think Andrew Moore's part of our best 18, to be honest. And it's really only been injuries which has ruined his year. If it wasn't for the injuries at the wrong time, he'd probably have played most games this year, I would have thought.
Yeah, look, I think there's some versatility to his game, which I like. He obviously can play the role as an inside midfielder. He's also big enough to actually play as a third forward, and he's a pretty good shot for goal. Yeah. He's an old utility type. You could even whack him onto a half-back flank against sort of a mid-sized forward. So I think Hinkley likes versatility in his players. So I think in terms of the sort of the longer term whiteboard strategy, I'm sure Moore's penciled in there to be part of the side going forward. He's just had some challenges with his body, which he hasn't been able to get the better of at this stage.
Well, could it be potentially that Moore might replace O'Shea? Because we've got with Carlisle back,
goal, isn't it?
Well, we've got Carlisle. We've got a Homch, Jonas. They'll be our three key tools.
Even though
maybe
O'Shea,
I would still like O'Shea to stay in, just because we do play that 7-man defence, and I think with O'Shea back there, it takes a bit of pressure off guys like Pittard and Broadbent to get that loose ball, because we know how good O'Shea is. His running power is fantastic. He's got great pace. He can play a shutdown role. He's really tall. He can take a good mark. He's probably our most versatile defender.
And he played the final last year well too, didn't he?
Oh, he did. Yeah, he was our best finals player last year.
Yeah, I think he can play on smalls effectively. I think he's a keeper. I'd keep him in the side. I think he's both worth his place now, and I think he'll develop into a very good player in time. He has his little moments now and again still where he'll turn the ball over, but he can play on talls and smalls. He's got a fantastic running capacity. And generally makes good decisions. You also get the sense when he plays for the team and is good for the culture of the team.
Yeah. I think there's going to be some fantastic matchups this week, especially down in defence. You would assume that Carlisle will go to Cloak. He's done the job on him the last couple of times they've played against each other. I guess the interesting one will be who goes to Jesse White and who goes to Ben Reid.
Yeah.
Does anyone need to go to them? That's Rick's joke for the night.
Well, look, Reid's it's a fantastic joke, Rick. Spot on. Reid's a pretty damaging player when he's in form. He's only played the one AFL game this year, which was last week, so you would think he's still coming in a little bit underdone. And for me, I would think that Homch would go to him, just because he's got that little bit of extra height. I'd be playing Jonas on Jesse White simply because I don't rate Jesse White at all, and I think Jonas will do a fantastic job on him. And I guess the other one that's going to be an interesting matchup will be who goes to Jamie Elliott.
Mm.
Yeah, Impey is obviously the logical matchup for Jamie Elliott, but Impey's form in the last month or so is a bit of a worry. I don't think there's another obvious matchup for Jamie Elliott.
Would that be your Cam O'Shea, perhaps?
I would say it's probably Jonas, but I think we might be a little bit hamstrung with Jonas playing tall again.
I mean, Jonas is 188. It's a big ask to put him on a player essentially 4 inches taller. But, I mean, he's done it before. But I think if we do it consistently as a practice, we're going to get caught out.
Do we think there's anyone in their defence that's worth tagging? You know, someone like a Harry Lumumba?
Yeah, he's the obvious one. I mean, with Heyshaw gone now, he's the obvious one who, plays the +1 role, drops off and gives them a lot of drive out of defence. It's probably a Monfries role, sort of a defensive forward role.
Yep. I'd actually like to see Paul Stewart go to Lumumba. I reckon he'd be the perfect matchup for him because he's got that little bit of extra height as well. And it would also free up Monfries because I don't think they've got a fantastic matchup for Monfries, to be honest.
I wonder if Gray plays a fair chunk of his game in the midfield again too this week.
I would hope so. Yeah.
I would think he would as well. I mean, he's the midfield's been down a bit. He's an informed player. He's also a leader of the club. I think he needs to spend a bit more time in there. It's obviously a robbing Peter to pay Paul dilemma though, because I think he's also been kicking a lot of goals, and our forward line has been struggling. And as many people on the boards have noted, structurally, there certainly seems to have been some issues.
Well, this is why the ins this week are so important because Monfries in really frees up Gray to play a lot in the midfield. And if Andrew Moore comes in, that really frees up Robbie Gray to play a lot in the forward line. So I think if we do end up bringing Andrew Moore in, that would be fantastic for the structure of the side.
I reckon, with this game that Collingwood's defence is a bit flaky. We get enough supply, we'll win the game. So if the midfield can get enough ball, which is probably about 50 inside 50s, and provided they're, that we're moving it at a decent pace, so their midfield's not dropping back on our forwards too much, then we should win the game.
Look, I would hope that Schultz and Westhoff will get the better of Frost and Lockie Keefe, I would hope. The other place where I think we could get a real advantage is also through the midfield. Obviously, Collingwood's first string midfield is fantastic with Beams, Pendlebury, Sidebottom. They do a fantastic job in there. But I think it's their second string midfield where we will get a lot of advantage because I think we've got a lot more players that can actually run through the midfield and do it effectively.
Yeah, look, I agree with that. I think they fall away probably pretty quickly, both in terms of talent, but also I wonder whether they've got the players that we have with just the sheer running capacity. So hopefully later in the game, we're able to blow some of their players up, and we'll actually be able to move the ball a bit. Once we get it on the outside, we can move it much more freely.
Yep. Is it all going to be in our head this weekend?
No, absolutely. I think that's right.
I don't think so. I think we're reading too much into it. I don't think there's any confidence issues, and I think the boys are going to come out running very hard, and we'll run over the top of them. And I'm hoping we set a very high example or standard in the first quarter, which will lead us in for the rest of the game.
So, Rick, you don't think confidence has been sort of eaten away in the last 4 weeks or so?
Look, no, I don't think so. Like I said, I think really our players have been brought back down to earth. I think more so than confidence, I think maybe arrogance. I think our players got a little bit ahead of themselves and they got arrogant. And I think Hamish Hartlett alluded to that in his press conference, and they got away from the fundamentals that was making them a fantastic footy side. So I don't think we've lost our confidence, but I think we might be less arrogant in the way that we play. And I'm hoping, as long as our fitness base has come back to us, I'm hoping that our players will play the hard-working football instead of the Larry football. and that will be enough. If we go back to the basics, that'll be enough for us to get over the top of a Collingwood side that's lacking a bit of talent. Dane Swan's out, which is a massive loss for them, and they've got a young side too. So, like you said, we should be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've noticed in the last month or so, we have been getting a bit fumbly, and probably in part due to the additional pressure that's been put on, with sides really pushing up on us, trying to block the ball in the back half, and there's been a lot of two grabbing and unable to take the ball cleanly. So I've sort of been wondering whether that's been an ebbing away of confidence, but I think this week will tell us a lot about that question as well, whether this is a confidence issue or a mental fatigue issue or a physical fatigue issue that we've had.
Definitely skills. Our skills have been down, which I think you can put down to fitness. I mean, we compare the first 10 games to the last 4 games. Our kicking's dropping short, or our handballs are to the feet, whereas before in the season, it was like the balls were on the palm of our hands, like on a string, and it was amazing. Nothing was missing. We were just crisp and clean, and to me that sort of comes across not as much confidence but more fitness based. So but I mean, it's easy to argue either way. So I mean, and you're right. What happened could be confidence, and I think what we need to really find is, are Collingwood going to come with the game that everyone else has, where they really try to congest our midfield, which has worked successfully in recent times, or are they going to just try and play their own game that they play? And I guess if they do keep it open, I think it might work to their detriment, to be honest.
Well, look, let's go on to our 4 questions. The first one, time to stand up. QPower, mate, I'll start with you with this one.
Yeah, look, I think Justin Westhoff, I think, is the obvious one for me. I think after a pretty good season last year and a really impressive start to the season this year, I think he just hasn't been playing, or we haven't been getting from him what you'd expect from a player of his age, ability and experience. Sort of goes back to this question of leadership. I think he's not in the leadership group, I know, but he tends, for my taste anyway, he tends to really go missing, and he's such a pivotal player when he's playing well for us, in terms of being able to stop momentum, but also when he drifts forward, being able to kick the odd goal. So I think he really needs to stand up and reduce the distance between his best and his worst play. I mean, he's vastly improved on, say, the pre-Hinkley era, but in terms of doing justice to his ability and becoming a consistent league footballer, I still don't see that he's there.
I'm going Brad Ebert. Contrary to AFL.com's who's hot and who's not, I think Brad Ebert hasn't been hot, but I think he's actually been quite cold, and I think he's been symptomatic of our form slump in relation to we've lacked his running power and his own overall cleanliness of the ball. Now, I don't know if he's carrying a shoulder injury or he's just fatigued from a hard season so far, but to me, Brad Ebert epitomises all the hard gut running of Port Adelaide. If he's gut running and running hard and doing the line running, that's reflective of our team game and our team overall. So what I'm hoping to see this weekend is Brad Ebert standing up, not necessarily getting the 40 possessions like he did against Sydney, but running the lines, running hard, clean disposal, using the ball well, and really influencing the game. And if he does that, I think that's a key indicator that our whole team's going to play well.
Yep, spot on. I'm going to go with another big name. I was originally going to say our midfield, but I'm going to go with Chatty Wingard this week. He's only kicked 2 goals in the last 5 weeks, and I think he's only had 4 goal assists in that time as well. He really needs to stand up and try and rediscover that form, not just of last year, but also of the first half of this season as well, where he was getting a lot of the ball, kicking a lot of goals, and also dishing a lot off as well. I think we need a big one from Chatty this week, and I would really love to see him have a 20 disposal 3 goal game this week.
Well, more broadly, Mac, I mean, where do you think he's at? He I watched the Melbourne game, and he, particularly in the first quarter, he really seemed to be running round and running sort of in circles around the ball carrier rather than cracking in and tackling. And I know it changed a lot in the second quarter. He looked to have been spoken to about that issue, but he really looks as though he's having the first down period of what's so far been a brilliant career.
Yeah, look, he's probably getting a little bit more, a little bit more pressure from his opponents than what he was getting last year. And I think it's probably being magnified a little bit just because of our poor form as a team as well. For me, he's someone that really needs to stand up this week. And look, we've named Westhoff, Ebert, and Wingard. I think we need our big guns firing this weekend.
Yeah, look, I think, when a player's as good as what he is, he'll come again, and he'll come again quickly. But if we're gonna fire a shot this year, he needs to find his best form very soon.
Absolutely.
Let's face it. Sorry, mate. I was just going to say, let's face it. He's been starved a bit in the forward line with our delivery up there too. But I'll just add that and say no more. Let's go.
No, that's fair enough. Danger man, Rick. Who's going to be Collingwood's danger man?
Oh, I'm going to go predictable, and I'm going to say Pendlebury. Like you pointed out earlier, Macca, rightfully so, they don't have a very deep midfield. So if we can really lock down Pendlebury, and I'll leave one of you guys to probably isolate Beams then, I think it's going to be very hard for them to dominate the midfield. So if we can take down their captain and really stop his influence in the game, I think that's going to be a big struggle for Collingwood to win the game.
Yeah, I reckon Jamie Elliott's probably the one. Collingwood have a number of small forwards. I think he's the best of them, and I think Impey will start. As you said, Jonas might have a crack if he gets off the chain, but I just feel like this week with Carlisle back, we're probably better equipped to handle their tools. I think we've got a lot of sort of medium-sized defenders, apart from Impey, who can play play small, but really are not that well suited to those super quick small forwards with the good lateral movement and tricks. Yep. So I think if we do get found out, it could be by a Collingwood small forward, and Elliott's the logical one because he's the best of them.
Love that call, mate, because I've chosen Jamie Elliott as well. He hasn't really had a big game against Port Adelaide yet. He took Mark of the Year last year, I think. But he's been in huge form this year. He's been a little bit down the last few weeks. But he'd be roundabout for the All-Australian team, I would think. He's super quick. He's got a massive leap. He's fantastic around the goals. Can take a good mark. They usually give him plenty of space to work in inside 50 as well. And look, I think Impey is the natural opponent for him. But as we mentioned earlier, Impey's been a little bit down the last month. And I don't think he can afford to be down this week, because if he is down, we might see Elliott kick a bit of a bag of goals.
Yeah, and if we have to move Jonas onto him, then we'll leave a Collingwood player sort of at 6'5" plus with a really undersized opponent.
Yep.
Put it this way, if Jamie Elliott's going to be our danger man, that means our midfield's not playing well and unaccountable, not going to be limiting their inside forward 50s, and we're going to lose the game as far as I'm concerned. So our midfield needs to step up, and that's why we need to cut down Pendlebury, because that's going to limit that sort of player's influence in the game, as far as I can see.
Yep. Is that your key to winning, Rick?
Yeah, my key to winning is the predictable midfield battle, Macca. And look, as far as popular word phrase for me to say, as far as I'm concerned, the midfield has been the underperforming area of our footy side for the last 6 weeks. Not enough run, not enough courage to try and break the lines and still attack the centre clearance, even though the teams have been trying to congest us in that 50 area space around the ball. So for me, it's really about now our midfield players and senior players, Hamish Hartlett, Brad Ebert, who have been down, Matty Broadbent off the half-back flank, that type of player really standing up and taking the game by the scruff of the neck, running the lines, being precise with our disposal, exerting their influence on the game and dominating the midfield, which will give us that inside 50 differential which we had in the first 14 games of the year, which will be the key for us to winning.
Beautiful. QPower?
Yeah, look, I think over the last month or so, what the most obvious thing that's fallen off to me are the sort of the effort stats. The contested ball and the tackle. I don't think we've won both before. We did with the Melbourne game, but before that, I don't think we've won both since we played the Bulldogs. So I think they're the two things I'll be looking at throughout the game and after. I think if we win those stats, we'll beat Collingwood. They'll sort of. I think they're the two stats that sort of most directly reflect effort and work rate. So I think it's about the contested ball and the tackle. All of the other parts of our game, the run, the disposal efficiency, all of that stuff which was working so well earlier in the year, it seems to happen off the back of those effort stats.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I'll be looking at. And with the Richmond game a couple of weeks ago, which I also went to, you could sort of sense in the first 10 or 15 minutes that Richmond players sort of looked at each other and said, these guys are just not on. And it really energised them and gave them confidence. And so if we see that in the first 15 or 20 minutes of this game, that those effort stats are down, then I think it will energise Collingwood and we'll be in trouble.
No, good call, that one. I like that. For me, it's Lobie. It comes down to Lobie dominating the ruck. He's coming up against just an okay ruck contingent of Jarrett Witts, and Brody Grundy's back in the he's on the extended interchange. So if he comes in as well, we have two okay ruckmen to go up against. But look, I think Lobie really needs a big game this week. They do struggle in the hit-outs, and they do struggle also in the clearances as well, Collingwood. He needs to show us that form that won us the final against Collingwood last year in what was one of his best games of AFL footy. And look, if he can do that, and if he can feed our midfield contingent, I think we'll go a long way of winning this game.
No, I think that's a really good call. I think he's looked in Trengove's absence tired. He's had to carry. I know he's a workhorse. He likes to work, but he's probably had to carry too much of the load himself. And I think with a bit of a break, we'd be looking to see him with a significantly improved performance. I think we'd be hoping that we can get Trengo back pretty quickly, because we don't want Lobie going into finals
absolutely
exhausted by the effort.
Yeah,
and
right.
if we can't get him back in the next couple of weeks, then I think that's probably the likely scenario we're facing.
Yeah,
I'd still like Lobie to be a kick behind the play influence a little bit more as well, or a kick in front of the play influence.
Well, that means he's actually got to take marks.
That's a good call.
Well, it's got to be something, because he just seems to, I don't know, he seems to be positioned in the midfield and the ball just seems to bypass him all the time, which I think is part of the reason he lacks that influence in the game. Whereas you think of the Matty Primus or the Dean Brogan or, any of our current ruckmen, they all were able to go behind or even go forward and influence the game. Now, I don't know if this is a strategic instruction from the coaching staff, or, to minimise maybe his workload, as you guys were saying. But, yeah, I would really love to, see him on the ground, get behind a little bit and see what he can do.
Rick, I don't know that he reads the game. I don't know he reads it well enough. I don't know he reads the game well enough.
Yeah, well, that's my question mark
on
him.
That's his role. I mean, we always seem to kick to him coming out from kick-ins, but he never takes the mark. But I think in general play, I think they like him running around in that sort of midfield third of the ground, just trying to act as that sort of, Dean Cox-like extra midfielder, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, but he doesn't get the ball. I'm with you,
I'm completely with you. He doesn't get the ball and he doesn't take enough marks, and he needs to do more around the ground, especially, coming off what was a fantastic season last year where he was fantastic around the ground. He has taken a noticeable step backwards this year.
It's a dimension of his game that hasn't improved. I mean, a lot of his game has improved, but I think particularly when you see him up against a player like Jamer, as he was a couple of weeks ago, the difference in the contested marking ability is really pronounced.
Yep.
And I think as well that was something that really stood out in that final against Geelong last year when he was up against Nathan Vardy. And Vardy took a couple of really important marks along the way. That is a dimension of his game he needs to improve, particularly if we're going to play one ruckman. We need him to be able to clunk them.
And that's why I'm in love with the lure of Redden, because to me, Redden looks like that natural ruckman that reads the play from the limited time that we've seen him, but he does get behind or in front and can take the mark and reads the play. And that's why I think he comes across as a naturally better ruckman. We just need him to stay fit and get on the park. And it wouldn't surprise me if he maybe even overtook Lobie at some point in time. But yeah, while Lobie's number one man, I'd love him to step up. So it's a good call, Macca, to put the heat on Lobie. It's not the first time this season I think you've done it though.
No, not at all. No, it's happened a few times, I think. Well, look, who's gonna win this game?
Yeah, I think we're going to win it by 4 or 5 goals. I think if we don't, then I think we need to ask some questions about where our season's headed. I think Collingwood are hardly going. They've got a very inexperienced back line, which our forward line should be able to expose. Swans out. They're but no better than a mid-table team on a good day. And if we can't get over them, then I think there's questions to be asked. But I think we will, and I think we'll do it comfortably.
Yeah, I reckon we'll win by the same, about 27 points. I think so 4 to 5 goal range. I'll do a serious tip for a change. So I think we should see a lot of run. Collingwood's going to put up a bit of fight. Wouldn't surprise me if it's a similar game to the Collingwood Adelaide game, except for we maybe get out, they chase us back, and then we claw away sort of the late part of the game.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to tip Port Adelaide as well. I think a lot of things are going in our favour. As you said, they've got a young side, a young back line. Swans out. Everything seems to be in our favour on paper. It's just going to be in our head whether we actually do turn up and play or not. I think we will. I think we understand that our premiership chances are on the line this week. We do need a good showing, and we do need the win, and I think we'll win by 17 points.
Cheer, cheer the black and the white. Honour the Magpies day and by night. Live that loyal.
Look, SANFL, Port play South Adelaide at Noarlunga on Saturday afternoon. We've won 7 of the last 10 against South. And the last time we met was a 10-goal win at Alberton in round 7. What are we hoping to see from this game?
Another win.
Another win, yep, absolutely. Johnny
Yeah,
Butcher, a few goals.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, he's Butcher's an interesting one, isn't he? About after 5 years on the list or so. The question I think you were saying last week, Macca, that sort of no guarantees that he'll make it.
Yep.
And I think that's right. There's all the signs there that it's just not quite the confidence to kind of work through the challenges that he has with his game. That he seems to be a bit spooked about. His set shots, which is understandable because he's got a technical problem. So yeah, I'd really love to see him do well. I think he's got a heap of talent, but I just think his self-doubt is still too strong to succeed consistently at the higher level.
Yep.
I just wanted to see another hard-running game. When is the game? Is it on Saturday?
Saturday afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that will give us good inspiration for Sunday. If we see the boys come out again, play a fast, hard-running game, I think that should give us supporters inspiration for the following day. I'm really interested to see Flinney. I thought he was pretty under the radar last week. He didn't really do too much. So I'd like to see Flinney stand up a little bit more. I'd like to see Archie influence the game like he did in the last month. So in other words, for him to stand up. And I'd like to see our big forwards really clunk some marks, get delivered some good passes, and really influence the scoreboard. That would be very, very refreshing for me as a supporter and give us hope that our forward stocks are progressing nicely, because that's my biggest concern at this point in time.
For someone living interstate, doesn't see much of the Maggies live, how far is Mason Shaw away from playing a bit of AFL footy?
I don't think he's too far away. He's just got to work on his defensive side of his game up forward. Sort of if if he doesn't take the mark, if the ball's not really in his area, he sort of stops a little bit, and that was a criticism of him through the under-18s. So it's something that he's got to work with. I think he's not too far away at all. He's got a lot of the attributes to make it at AFL. Though he is a fantastic kick of the ball. He's a wonderful. He's like the anti-Butcher. He's a wonderful set shot. So calm with the ball in his hands. He can take a fantastic mark. He's good at ground level as well. It's just that sort of defensive pressure when he doesn't have the ball that he's got to improve on.
Yeah, I think that's something, young players coming into the system probably find the hardest and need to work the most on, sort of after being talented juniors and being better than their peers. They haven't had to do those things as much, but just from the grabs I see of him on the website with the SANFL highlights, he looks and moves like an AFL player.
He does, absolutely. Yep.
And he's a good reader of the play from what I've seen. So, yeah, hopefully in a bit more time. I'm just having a look at Tex wearing a Port Adelaide jumper. Tex Wanganeen, isn't that? That'd be nice to see him playing for the Maggies.
Father-son Rick.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. I hope so. I said a bit off topic this, but I said on the board a couple of hours ago, I just can't see how Tex wouldn't want to be playing for Port Adelaide, to be honest. So hopefully he's with us, Bruce.
Aren't the Bombers working on him?
I think they're doing a lot of work with memberships and, speaking to players and all that sort of stuff and inviting the Wanganeens over to games and all that sort of stuff.
They had Tex run through the banner once a couple of years back. But you'd hope that,
we're doing the exact same sort of thing. So it really comes down to who he wants to play with and in the end whether he's actually good enough to make it, to a draft sort of level, I guess.
I think he'll get picked.
Yeah.
Just on name alone.
I think for 9 out of 10 17-year-old kids, if you can stay home, you will.
Yeah.
Well, I just can't see any logics why Gavin would be encouraging him to go to Essendon. Gavin's our captain, former captain. He started with us, finished with us, came back to us, involved with the club. He obviously loves the club, and obviously he's going to have the most influence on where his son plays. I couldn't see Gavin going, you know what, mate, I think you should go play for Essendon instead of Port Adelaide. I'd fall off my chair, I reckon. My chair would be rocking all night long.
I think that.
Look,
I think
he's
that's
only
right.
10. There's still a lot of water to go under the bridge with that one. And I think in the end, as a father, you'd want your son to go somewhere where they're going to get the best opportunity. And if that's at Essendon, then good luck to him. If it's at Port Adelaide, then great for us, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with this situation too, which is sort of funny as you say, sort of intimating Macca for such a young kid, is that I think Gavin Wanganeen has some commercial sort of interest in Essendon with the gym, so he doesn't want to explicitly say, well, of course he goes to Port Adelaide because it'd probably be bad for business.
Yeah. Yeah, do agree with that one. Well, look, let's...
Sorry, I sidetracked the SANFL section.
You're all good, mate. Let's leave it there for tonight. QPower, it's great to have you on, mate.
Thank you very much, Macca, and thanks, Rick, for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
No worries. Rick, as always, buddy.
I'm looking forward to the game. I hope you guys enjoy it over there. I'm jealous I'm not there. I wish I was going, but I can't. So have a ball, but I'll be looking forward to the week after against Sydney when we knock the big buddy off.
That's it. We'll be positive.
Yes.
We're going to win. We're going to see a win. QPower's going to see his first win for 37 years away from home. Let's bring it on.
Exactly.
Looking forward to it.
Go Port Adelaide.
Go Port.
Go Port.
Cheers, boys.
It's on in the kitchen. Oh, look at this. Play it simple. Good attack from Galapati Carlisle. He left his man. He took them on. He gets the lines. Oh, baby! The finest of white.